In this video, I'm going to show you the simple chat example that comes with ElectroServer. When you install ElectroServer, you have the option to install the examples, and if you choose to, it installs dozens of examples and a few games. And so today I'm going to show you just the simple chat example in Unity. We have ElectroServer running locally here on IP 127.0.0.1 and port 9899. So let's look in the code examples folder here. So if you go in there, by the way, I'm running ElectroServer 5.0.1 here. Future versions may change the structure a little bit, but we go into the code examples folder, and you can see there's a few dozen examples in here. And we flip down to the simple chat example and go into the client directory, and you can see that there's this example is written in several different languages that all work with ElectroServer. ActionScript 2, ActionScript 3, Cocoa Touch, C#, Java, Unity, and XNA. In the Unity folder, there's a C# version and a JavaScript version. We're going to look at the C# version. But just before I show you the code, I want to show you what the application looks like. So let me go into the bin directory here and launch the application. Okay, so I'm going to log in here. You can specify the IP and the port, and I'm just going to log in with my name, Job. And I'm going to send a chat message, hello. And if I launch another version of this, I can log in as, say, Mike. Hello, Job. And you can see over here on Job's screen, both chat messages are seen. Hello, Mike. Okay, so that's this application. You can just see a user list. Both users can, or as many users happen to be in here, can all chat with each other. Then as the users leave, you can see the user list go down to 0 by the time everybody's gone. So let's look at the code. You can see that there's nothing 3D going on in here. This is just a straight up UI application with some code. So if you click on the main camera, you can see in the inspector down here that there's a script associated with it. Simple chat UI. In the project panel here, you can see that there's a plugins directory that contains the 3 DLLs needed for the ElectroServer API. And in the scripts directory, there's just one script. So let's look at that. Okay, over here in Visual Studio Express, I have the simple chat UI script open. So I'm just going to show you the ElectroServer API pieces and pretty much just skip over any of the Unity stuff that you probably already know, things about the UI. So we start off here with importing 3 different packages: the API package, the core package, and log4net. The API package gives us access to all of the messages that can be sent and received by ElectroServer and the API. Things like login request, login response, things like that. The core package gives us access to the API's entry point, so the engine, which allows us to actually listen for the events and send messages, and it also manages some things like which rooms you're in. The log4net package gives us the ability to enable logging so that we can see what's going on logged to the console. We're not really going to look at that at this in this video. So going down here to the class properties, you can see that there's an ES property with a data type of ElectroServer. It doesn't have a value yet. We'll create that below. And this is our main entry point into the API. There's also a current room property with a data type of room, and it's set to null right now, but once we join a room, we'll give this a value of that room. Okay, so down here, this this function is called when the application is initialized, and ElectroServer, the ElectroServer API is initialized by creating a new instance of the ElectroServer class. This next line of code is to make things thread safe for Unity. So by default, the queuing for ElectroServer is set to internal, but you can see we're setting it to external here. When it's internal, that means whenever a message is received by the API from the server, it's immediately dispatched. But in Unity, that event handler is called in a new thread, which makes it difficult to work with. So if we set it to external here, and then we manually call a dispatch in the update function, then all dispatch events happen within the same thread, and so it makes it easier to work with in Unity. So two things to note is, one, you need to include this line in Unity, and then the second is, if I zoom way down here to the fixed update function, you call es.engine.dispatch whenever, as fast as you can, pretty much, so during the fixed update. So going way back up here again to the initialize area, you can see that we add 4 event handlers. So we want to know when certain things happen, like when we've connected to the server, when we've received a login response, whenever a chat message is received, and when we've joined a room. So that's what these event handlers are for. So I'm going to show you where we attempt our connection, where we attempt our login, where we try to join a room, and we'll also look at the event handlers. So down here you can see I'm looking for the connect area. There we go. Okay, so when the connect button is clicked in the UI, all this code, well, this code here is executed. And what does it do? Security.prefetch socket policy is for the web player in Unity. If you're not using the web player, you don't need this line, but if you are using the web player, we recommend you use this line of code to load the policy file from ElectroServer so that the application has permission to talk to it. Security is kind of a convoluted topic, so we'll leave that for another time. For now, just know that you need this line of code. Alright, so how do we set up the how do we let the API know where we want to connect? We do that by creating a new instance of the server object, and you can, this parameter here is the name of the server that you want to assign. You can give it any name you want. This is just for a convenience of lookup later. You could look up servers by name. Once you've created the server object, you want to add as many available connection instances to that as you think you need. In our case, we're just going to add one. An available connection object is just an object that contains connection information for a possible connection to ElectroServer. The ElectroServer has the ability to listen on many IPs and ports and protocols. So you can specify an array of them here, but we're just going to specify one. So if we look at what we're adding here, it's new available connection. We specify the host name, the port. We're converting that to a number here because it was pulled from the UI as a string. And then we specify the connection type. We use binary TCP. You can look on our website for information on the other types of connections. Alright, once the server has been configured with available connections, you add that server to the engine, so es.engine.addServer, and then you just tell the engine to connect, es.engine.connect. Once a connection has either succeeded or failed, the onConnection response event handler is called. So onConnection response, the onConnect event handler here is executed. It takes a connection response data type, and we call the variable here, the parameter response. If response.successful, then that means we connected. And so once we've connected, we want to send a login request. We create a new login request object, and we set a username on that login request. And then we send the login request to the server using es.engine.send. So we sent the login request. What about the login response? The onLogin event handler is called when the login response has been received. So it takes a login response data type here, the parameter, and we call it response. If response.successful, then that means we successfully logged in. So if we successfully logged in, then let's join a room. We can do that using the create room request. And the create room request, by default, the name implies that all you're going to do with this request is create a room. But what it does is, by default, it will create a room and join you to that room. And if the room already exists, it'll just join you to the room instead of failing. There are flags on this object that allow you to get a failure back if the room already exists. But most people just leave all the defaults set as is, and you can just specify a room name and a zone name, and they can be anything you want, and it'll create that room. And if it already exists, you just automatically are joined to that room. So create the room request, configure it, send it to the server. And once you're joined to the room, the join room event occurs, and the onJoin room event handler is called. So once you've joined that room, this event handler is called, and it takes a join room event data type, and we're using just E as the parameter name here. It contains a few useful properties like e.zoneID and e.roomID. So we can use the zone ID and the room ID to look up the room object that we've just been joined to. So es.managerHelper.zoneManager, and then we look up the zone by ID, and then on that zone we look up the room by ID, and that returns the room. So we want to know which room we're in so that when we send a chat message, we can send it to the right place. So let's look for the code that sends a chat message. I may have to, oh, here it is. Send chat. To send a chat message, you create a new public message request, and you populate that with 3 key values: zone ID, room ID. Those 2 values tell the server where you want to send the message, and then the message. And this is a string value just that contains the chat message. And then you send this request to the server. And then let's look at what we call that event handler here on public message. So when the public message has been received by the client, so when you send the request to the server processes it and sends it back to all clients in that room. And the onPublic message event handler in this case is called, and we just simply append to the chat the username and the message. So the public message event object contains the name of the user that sent it and the message. So one last thing to show here is how we render the usernames to the screen. And I think that is, where is that? Let's look for the chat UI. Okay, here it is. Down here in lines 275 through 277, this whole function here renders the chat UI, and when this piece of it is called, it loops through all of the users in the current room and then renders their username to the box. So all this code together allows you to build a simple chat.